The clothes we wear are a staple of our identity. These pieces of fabric are synonymous with our cultures, expressions, and beliefs. Throughout the modern age, fashion has remained a spectacle. From the hard cuts and sharp silhouettes of the 80s, all the way to the modern, ultra abstract designs of today, fashion has remained at the forefront of our eyes. So then, why is it all so ugly? Like, come on. I know most of us wouldn't consider ourselves to be high art connoisseurs, but I'd hazard a guess that I'm not the only one who finds these off putting, or think this silhouette just isn't quite there. Sure, most people will acknowledge that there'll always be some items that they find to be a bit odd looking. But surely there must be some form of common sense or shared logic when it comes to these designs. Isn't the point of fashion to appeal to our sense of aesthetics? It's funny to sell us $1,000 trash bag, but the glancing charm has worn off, and the trope is quite played out at this point. So why be so extreme, so obnoxious, so loud? Well, it all starts with the first threads. Wearing animal skins and furs was our primary method of both protection and decoration, with the skins of warm animals with soft brown pelts and earthy tones being used in the northern hemisphere for their warmth. If you were feeling really fancy, you could decorate with the bright shiny bones of a hard-to-hunt animal in order to draw attention from the crowd. Our sense of style evolved in direct tandem with nature and current events, which is a trend that has not stopped since the advent of humanity. If a given color palette is too outlandish, we almost innately cannot take the outfit seriously as a garb. Speculatively speaking, it may have something to do with the natural color coding of poisonous and toxic animals, with nature marking these creatures with standoffish visages to be avoided. This link between our environment and our sense of style progressed even during the innovations of the Industrial Revolution, with ornate patterns and fine silks being a sort of competition amongst the elite, a shouting match about who could deliver the most structured garments from the farthest, most remote regions. This sense of prestige carried on throughout high fashion to this day. Sure, the designs weren't hand-stitched to suit your body, and now you had large production mills putting together bags for a customer base. But generally speaking, for a long time, you believed if you were paying a premium, then you were getting a high-quality garment made to wow a crowd. That is until the modern times, where it is no secret that your run-of-the-mill designer handbag has all the inner workings and machinations of a Beanie Baby. And high fashion is more disenfranchised from the average person than ever before. But where did this come from? And how is this possible? How has being unappealing become mainstream? And why does nobody seem to like it, but everybody copies it? Well, you see, back in the 1920s, the First World War bled into fashion. Brands started exploding onto the scene. They were meaning to tap into the high-class world of the aristocrats of the 17th century. And in order to do so, they created stiff designs with hard lines meant to bestow a sense of authority and power to consumers. By imposing a structured energy into the clothes, it was thought that their forms would project onto the lives of the people. Almost simultaneously, an entirely new view on the clothes we wear started to take root, with the increase in production and the first waves of media forming the start of fashion as we know it today, in an experimental manner rather than strictly practical form. During war times, the ones left to design and sew the clothes were most often women, and with the turning of both world wars, bringing massive leaps into the textile industry. From a business person standpoint, fashion was more akin to manufacturing rather than an artistic canvas. But if fashion is anything as a whole, it is an industry that does not enjoy the ordinary, and the choice of garment making or leather crafting became an increasingly fringe and niche career field. Therefore, the only ones left to continue the art of design were those who held a unique interest in the craft and the evolution of its expression. Sure, big brands were able to make iconic pieces and define decades through association and advertisement alone. Niche designers, on the other hand, had to turn to an ever more elaborate swan dance in order to garner viewership and establish themselves as a relevant fashion staple. This has led to some interesting occurrences, and with the advent of social media, these obscure creations have exploded onto the scene once again, which is what enables wearing things like Mistress Big Red Boots and tabbies as a whole. But at the end of the day, what is the point? If most people aren't going to like them, then why bother spending the time, energy, and resources to not only create these monstrosities, but also heavily market them? Well, the answer to that question is twofold. Since smaller designers do not have the luxury of relying on existing knowledge, they must be the most creative and daring in their designs to the point that no one is brave enough or stupid enough to mimic them. Now sure, at times this can result in some truly abhorrent machination. It can also at times result in creations whose beauty is so outlandish that it makes you want to throw out the closest Hanes brand t-shirt, but pieces like that are much harder to come across, due to the fact that a majority of these are one-offs with extremely limited productions or fit and designed specifically for one model. So you'll never see them being the latest fashion staple or imprint themselves onto popular culture. Even when pieces go excessively viral, its cultural relevance is short-lived. So typically you'll see a lot more mass-produced silhouettes chasing the trend than you ever will soulful renditions. The only way an artist will get enough money and time to truly encapsulate their vision with a large platform is if they're already well capable of making clothes that will fly off the shelves. That is, of course, unless you were going for an ultra-punk, edgy brand in the first place, where the small budgets are a part of the spark. However, designers who enter this space typically either capitulate somewhat to the logics of business or have at best erratic personalities and production schedules. Even still, amongst all of this outside pressure to conform, designers and creative directors have still managed to carry this generational spark for the expression of clothing, using their creations as a method of criticism of the whole charade to begin with. The reason you find modern fashion so ugly is because it is alien. It is ugly. No longer are designers appealing to the human form and letting it dictate the flow of their garments. They are now aiming to express a sense of rebellion and wild chaos lost to the angles and edges of the 1950s. The first instinct when seeing something unfamiliar is to repel away from it. Because at the end of the day, fashion is subjective. And while people assume that the appeal rate should hit about 50-50, I would argue that more superior forms of creation have a much lower rate of enchantment than that. It's okay if only 1 out of 50 pieces you see catches your eye and inspires you. As long as something does, that is a resounding success. I, for example, personally love tabby shoes. To me, they're the cutest things ever. But my roommate absolutely detests them and cannot stand the sight of them. And that's all okay. In the modern world, where culture is retreating back to its safety nets, something which opposes should be celebrated. I think it's safe to say we have had enough of sanitized mainstream media telling us what we should and shouldn't like and say. So yes, it is okay that you don't like the latest spring season of Balenciaga. However, I'm sure if you dug deeper into more obscure brands, you could find the exact silhouettes and aesthetics you crave. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.